वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivarikacharya Astottara Shata Srimad Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिव सदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम के Shri Mayapurdama ki Anitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Lotus Feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurum Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitan Yena Bhutale Swayan Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dīnabandho Jagatpate Opesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the second canto, chapter first, the first step in God realization. And I don't have a mic, right? Is the mic on? No mic. Okay, so this is text 32 on the board. Vrīḍottarauṣṭho dhara eva lobho vrīḍottarauṣṭho dhara eva lobho dharma-stano dharma-patho pṛṣṭham dharma-stano dharma-patho pṛṣṭham tasya meḍhraṁ vṛṣaṇau ca mitrau tasya meḍhraṁ vṛṣaṇau ca mitrau kukṣiḥ samudrā girayo sthi-saṅghāḥ kukṣiḥ samudrā girayo sthi-saṅghāḥ vrīḍottarauṣṭho dhara eva lobho dharma-stano dharma-patho pṛṣṭham tasya meḍhraṁ vṛṣaṇau ca mitrau kukṣiḥ samudrā girayo sthi-saṅghāḥ. Bolo. vrīḍottarauṣṭho dhara eva lobho dharma-stano dharma-patho pṛṣṭham kukṣiḥ samudrā girayo sthi-saṅghāḥ vrīḍottarauṣṭho dhara eva lobho dharma-stano dharma-patho pṛṣṭham tasya meḍhraṁ vṛṣaṇau ca mitrau kukṣiḥ samudrā girayo sthi-saṅghāḥ. Vaishnavis. vrīḍottarauṣṭho dhara eva lobho dharma-stano dharma-patho pṛṣṭham tasya meḍhraṁ vṛṣaṇau ca mitrau kukṣiḥ samudrā girayo sthi-saṅghāḥ oṣṭha dhara eva lobho dharma stano dharma-patho pṛṣṭham tasya meḍhraṁ vṛṣaṇau ca mitrau kukṣiḥ samudrā girayo sthi-saṅghāḥ vrīḍa, modesty, uttara, upper, oṣṭha, lip, adharaḥ, chin, eva, certainly, lobhaḥ, hankering, dharmaḥ, religion, stanaḥ, breast, adharma, irreligion, pathaḥ, way, tasya, his, pṛṣṭham, back, kaha, brahma, tasya, his, meḍhraṁ, genitals, vṛṣaṇau, testicles, cha, also, mitrau, the Mitrā-varuṇas, kukṣiḥ, waist, samudrā, the oceans, girayo, the hills, asthi, bones, saṅghāḥ, stack. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Modesty is the upper portion of his lips. Hankering is his chin. Religion is the breast of the Lord. And irreligion is his back. Brahmaji, who generates all living beings in the material world, is his genitals. And the Mitrā-varuṇas are his two testicles. The ocean is his waist, and the hills and mountains are the stacks of his bones. Purport. The Supreme is not impersonal as misconceived by less intelligent thinkers. Rather, he is the Supreme Person, as confirmed in all authentic Vedic literatures. But his personality is different from what we can conceive. It is stated here that Brahmaji acts as his genitals and that the Mitrā-varuṇas are his two testicles. This means that as a person, he is complete with all bodily organs, but they are of different types with different potencies. When the Lord is described as impersonal, therefore, it should be understood. Can you hear me when the mic goes off? Can you still hear me? On the back? It goes on and off, right? You hear? When the Lord is described as impersonal, therefore, it should be understood that his personality is not exactly the type of personality found within our imperfect speculation. One can, however, worship the Lord even by seeing the hills and mountains or the ocean and the sky as different parts and parcels of the gigantic body of the Lord, the Virat Purusha. The Virat Rupa, as exhibited by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, is a challenge to the unbelievers. Sukadeva Goswami is answering the question of Parikshit Maharaj. And the question was, how can I get rid of the dirty things in the heart so that I can go back home, back to Godhead? Do we have this question too? How can I get rid of the things, dirty things in the heart? And the answer to the question is that we must remember, glorify, and worship the Supreme Lord, particularly at the time of death. But now Shukadeva Goswami, he is gonna, in order to establish the superiority of bhakti, he is going to delineate different processes that can also lead towards self-realization. And like this chapter is entitled, The First Step in God Realization. So what is the first step in God realization? Huh? Yeah, but how do you get to that conclusion? Yeah. According to the Bhagavatam, first step in God realization, second canto. You have been coming to the classes before? Yeah? Anyway, we're on text 32. Huh? Thank you. Perceiving the Lord in the universal form. Your answers are valid, but in this context, this is answer. So the first step of God realization is to perceive the Lord in matter. And this is described as a mystic yoga process in which the yogi actually, he controls the senses, he controls his sitting posture, and he meditates on the form of the Lord in matter. Prabhupada explains that this is a favor to the neophytes, because when someone cannot conceive something beyond matter, then he may be able to conceive or to get an idea of the grandeur or the majesty of the Lord by seeing the wonderful manifestation. Like when someone cannot see beyond matter, he may see something which is very powerful, like, or something very beautiful, like the Himalayas, or he may see like a powerful storm or the waves of the ocean. And this may bring in him a sense of there is a superior force, there is something superior than me. And ultimately bring him to the conception of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is interesting that even though this universal form is impersonal in one sense, the universal form is impersonal, but we are hearing here about so many personal features of the Lord, right? Like we heard his lips are his, what are his lips? Modesty, well. And his chin, hankering. And his testicles, his genitals. Yeah. So these are our personal features of the Lord. And the idea is that actually the universal form of the Virat Rupa is an impersonal feature of the Lord because it's expanded everywhere. It's the energies of the Lord. And there is not so much of a personal reciprocation. When we see, but of course, depending on the sincerity of the worshipper, there may be some reciprocation. And Prabhupada explains that actually, unless one develops a service, mood, a service attitude, by meditating on the universal form, then it is of no much value. So in other words, and this is where your answers were coming in good, that actually really the beginning of spiritual life is to understand my relationship with the Supreme Lord as a servant. And for those who are non-devotees, for those who are very gross materialists, then this path of the meditation on the Virat Rupa is recommended. So this is the context, and the whole Bhagavatam is going to describe so many different spiritual paths, but then ultimately it's going to reject them all. And if it's not going to reject them, it's going to establish how the direct process of Krishna consciousness is so much more effective and powerful. But we can see that, you see, the idea with the universal form is also that we get to understand that nothing exists independent from the Lord. And this is a meditation which is also valid for us. It's very, very... I mean, Prabhupada explains that the devotees are not interested in the universal form. And even though Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, he asks at the end of the chapter 10, Krishna says, but what need is there of all these descriptions? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade the entire universe. And then Arjuna continues in chapter 11 and says, well, I want to see that form. I want to see that universal form of yours. And that universal form that Krishna showed to Arjuna is more of a revelation. Because what Arjuna saw, he saw the whole universe in one place. Like thousands of suns were rising at the same time. And he saw, how the Kauravas were like being smashed in the mouth of the universal form. He was licking, the heads were coming off his mouth and the blood was coming and he was licking the blood and there was fire coming out of the mouth and it was time. Who are you? And Arjuna becomes bewildered and he asks him, who are you? He says, I am time, the destroyer of the world. Yeah. I am all devouring death. So Bhagavad Gita is teaching us many different ways in which we can learn and in which we can become Krishna conscious. This is a whole process. How to see Krishna in every situation. And the Bhagavad Gita is also taking us step by step, even at the beginning with the idea that we have to perform sacrifice. Like it is explained that for understanding the superiority of God or becoming Krishna conscious, to live in nature is a lot more favorable. Why? Because we see how we are dependent on the natural resources. When you live in the city, like they did some survey, I think it was in the UK, and they were asking children, where does milk come from? Nearly everyone thought that milk came from supermarkets. They didn't know they came from cows. You can't imagine. So when we are in nature, we see that we are dependent. Like I have a beautiful, parijata tree in front of my house. And at the beginning of Kartik, it was blooming with flowers. So many flowers I could bring to the temple. And I was just thinking that, so much abundance. Krishna is just providing so much, And now it stopped. And even if I try to get the flowers, they are not there. So who is in control? Me or God? It's God, right? Clearly. But in materialistic society, everybody is under the illusion that we are the controllers. And this whole meditation, this whole purpose of the Bhagavatam is to remove that misconception. Like also, when we understand that Krishna is providing, like Krishna is providing the rice, He's providing the vegetables that we eat, He's providing everything. Then naturally the tendency will be that then in order to get these things, then I have to please the Lord. I have to appease Him through sacrifice. So then the concept of sacrifice is there established. And all these ideas are like foreign for the materialists. And why? Because they don't want to be the servant. They want to be independent. the reason why we don't see Krishna in every situation is due to our desire. We see things, the concept of duality, because you see what is explained here is that Krishna is everything. There is nothing outside of him. Everything that you see is Krishna. Like one time Prabhupada was asked, is Krishna God? And Prabhupada said, yes. He's also hate. He's everything. There is nothing outside of him. But material consciousness is that we see things separate from the Lord. And why we see things separate from the Lord? Because we want to enjoy them. Unless we see things separate from him, we will feel obliged. If we think that everything belongs to God and I have to do sacrifice, I'm depending on him, or how can I enjoy myself? Of course, we can enjoy ourselves by performing devotional service. That's who we really are. But the materialist, no, he wants to be the controller. He wants to be the enjoyer. To be the enjoyer, there has to be also, when we are talking about being the enjoyer, we also talk about a sense of superiority, of being the controller. You cannot enjoy unless you have that sense of being the controller, being better than everybody else. And this is or trying to be better than everybody else. And that's what we see in the material world, this envy, this sense of competition. Everybody's trying to, just even enjoyment is not enough. If someone is enjoying better than I am, I cannot enjoy. I want more and I want more. So this conception can be removed when we see that everything is connected with the Lord. And that goes back to the question that Parikshit asked, how can I remove the dirty things from the heart? And the simple answer is by fixing the mind on Krishna. There is one famous verse in the Puranas, Smartata satatam Vishnur, Vismartavyo najatuchit, Sarve vidi nishedarshur, etayor eva kinkara. And it says that there are many rules and regulations in the scriptures. So many. But all the rules and regulations of the scriptures are servants of two principles. What are those two principles? Always remember Krishna and never forget him. So whatever we're doing in spiritual life, in Krishna consciousness, is meant to help us remember Krishna and not forget him. If with what we are doing in Krishna consciousness, we are forgetting Krishna, then we're missing the point. And it's simple, but it's profound. This is something to really, really meditate upon. Are my activities bringing me to a meditation on Krishna? I am actually seeing Krishna's hands in every situation? Or I am trying to manipulate the situation, control the situation, and not understanding that everything is controlled by Krishna, ultimately. And this instruction is given by Narada Muni, is explained also in the Bhagavatam. Somehow, Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Devotion, similar verse, just 2 lines separate. Somehow or other, just fix your mind on Krishna. Somehow or other, fix your mind on Krishna. So naturally then, we will understand that, much better than to meditate on the, impersonal, all-pervading feature of the Supreme Lord, will be to meditate directly on Krishna and his pastimes, his loving pastimes. And then the necessity of the Srimad Bhagavatam arises. Because what is the Bhagavatam? The Bhagavatam is a meditation on Krishna. It's a meditation on Krishna and the different devotees, and that's why it's mandatory. Mandatory. I mean, we don't take that vow at initiation, but it's so much obvious that we must read Bhagavatam every day. That we must hear, we must keep ourselves in touch. We must fill our consciousness with thoughts of Krishna. And that's what's going to actually remove all misconceptions, all lamentation, all doubts. Everything is going to come through that meditation on the Supreme Lord. I'm proud, like Prabhupada, because we're going to be hearing a lot about this universal form. And now, the universal form, in one place it says it's transcendental, in other places it says it's material. So what is it? Is it transcendental? What is it? Is the universal form transcendental or is it material? It's kind of confusing, no? You hear in the Bhagavad Gita this manifestation given to Arjuna. What? Then the universal form, Krishna also showed it to whom? Who else saw the universal form? Not the same one as Arjuna, but he showed the universal form to two people before, eh? To Duryodhana, yeah? And why was it? The Duryodhana, actually Krishna had come as a messenger of peace to see the Kauravas, telling them, this word, stop doing, just forget it, give some land to the Kuru, to the Pandavas, finish. And the Kauravas, they more or less laughed at him, and they tried to bind him. And Krishna at that point, he expanded his form in such a way he couldn't be bound, because he can only be bound by the robes of love. But even then, they could not understand that he was God. They were thinking, he's a mystic, he's doing some mystic thing. And then another time that he showed the universal form was who? Yeah, Mother Yashoda. And when Mother Yashoda saw the universal form, how did she respond to this? She was thinking, something is wrong with my son. Yeah? He's sick or something. Someone, she also didn't, came to her mind that, he's the Supreme Lord. But both cases different. Yoga Maya, Mahamaya. In the case of Yashoda, her love for Krishna was so intense that it covered, you could say, godliness of Krishna. And it's also there that the gopis, they are not interested in Krishna showing his opulences. They actually don't want to. They are only interested in loving feeling, in loving reciprocations. So we see the difference of the levels of consciousness, like we can see, for example, in this yogi who is meditating on the universal form, and the pure devotee. The yogi is, still independent, is trying to, by his own efforts, try to attain some, realization, some self-realization, but it's not attracted to the Lord. It's not attracted to the Lord. What the beginning is actually of talking about the first step is when one develops a desire to hear about Krishna. That's the Bhakti Lata. That's the point, the turning point. All this is preliminary to wanting to hear from the Lord. So the gopis, they say, they don't want to see the opulence of the Lord. They chastise him. They blame him, they accuse him, they do all kinds of things. Because their love for Krishna is so intense. It cannot be covered by the opulence, the Aishvarya of the Lord. And then he showed the universal form also to Arjuna. And Arjuna, how he responded? He became intimidated. Of course, the universal form that he saw, it was intimidating. Yeah? So similarly, and this brings the topic to just our own lives, that in our own lives, we may also see some gross, intimidating situations. And we may also become like bewildered. But a Krishna conscious person will see that, oh, this is also my Lord. This is also Krishna. Prabhupada said that I also saw the universal form. You know, when did he saw? He said he was in Calcutta, and he was I don't know who was bombing Japanese. I don't remember the details of that, but someone was bombing, and everybody went into the protection thing where they go to hide, and Prabhupada stay out eating kachoris. And he said, oh, this is also a form of Krishna. It's not a very pleasing form, but it's also Krishna's form. So it's very instructive because we should never lose sight of reality. And the reality is Krishna. This universal form is described also as imaginary. You see, so many confusing points, right? At least for me, it was, is imaginary, is transcendental, is it material, is it a manifestation, is it... So how is it imaginary? Because we are imagining something. We are imagining that the mountains are Krishna's bones. We are imagining that the rivers are Krishna's veins, and the ocean is his waist. Is it? You could say in one sense is and in one sense isn't, because everything is inconceivable, one and different from the Lord. The material world is also Krishna. But really it's an imagination. We are imagining that, but at the same time that imagination is closer to reality than the person who is just seeing a mountain. Why? Because we are connecting with reality. We are seeing the reality, and the reality is that there is nothing separate from Krishna. And the illusion is to see that things are separate from the Lord. And even in our spiritual practices, we may create all these divisions. This is my spiritual life, this is my material life. No. It's all Krishna consciousness. It's not that I do my sadhana and I get up in the morning and I do all these things and then the rest of the day I'm just, an asshole, No, it's not Krishna conscious. Krishna conscious means everything. You see everything in connection with the Lord. How can I connect this situation? How can I please Krishna in this situation? How I see like Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita also he says that for one who has seen the truth, that's Tattvadarshis, right? Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te gyanan yaninan tattvadarshina. That says that, those who have seen the truth, approach those. And he says in the next verse, he says that, what have they seen? They have seen that every living entity, they're all but nothing but part of the Supreme. We're seeing every living entity connected with Krishna. So it's no question of exploitation. There is, even with the material energy, is connected with the Lord. The devotee, he doesn't waste anything. He doesn't exploit the resources of material nature because he sees the connection with the Lord. And Prabhupada was very vigilant, was very with this type of things. That's Krishna conscious. It's 24/7. You're always in connection with the Lord. So it is imaginary, but at the same time it is Shastra Chakshus. You are seeing the world through the eyes of Shastra. So yes, this is the Lord. It's helping me to remind. So, I remember in situations where things kind of got out of hand. You feel like, okay, this is beyond my control. Is beyond even my level of, I can't cope with this. It's too much. But at those times that we can remember, Arjuna, he saw everybody being killed there. And what was his response? All this is rightly done. All this is rightly done. because he saw Krishna's hand behind it. So it didn't mean that he didn't do anything. He fought the war, he did everything, he responded to the situation, but he was, aligned with the plan of the Lord. He wasn't misaligned. He saw how this circumstance helps me in my Krishna consciousness. How this situation dictates to me in terms of my service. What am I supposed to do? This is also Krishna. Whatever purification we may be undergoing right now, anyone undergoing severe purification right now? No one? Only me? Okay? So we should embrace that. Embrace it, that this is also Krishna's special arrangement for my own advancement. So we're giving these different steps. Now is the meditation on the universal form. So the question was, so how is imaginary? Okay, we said, how is it transcendental? We're talking, is it material or is it transcendental? We explain how it's material, right? We're seeing the Lord in matter. So how is transcendental? Because the Lord enters into it, because it's non-different from the Lord. So from that perspective, the universal form is transcendental. But from the perspective of being eternal, it is not eternal. It is a material form. It doesn't exist in the spiritual world, basically. The universal form is only here. So it's temporary. And therefore the devotee is not interested. He's not interested. Although he may see, he may admire, he may be reminded of Krishna by his beauty, by the beautiful manifestations. In fact, so much of the Bhagavad Gita is there to give us hints how to see Krishna in matter. Chapter 7, chapter 9, chapter 10. So many aspects of Krishna's beauty. But this is only just a little spark of Krishna's opulence. We can imagine what Krishna's actual beauty is. The source of all beauty, the source of everything that we see in the material world. How much more beautiful that he must be. And the price, and going back to this verse now, that he says that irreligion is his back. Irreligion. Yeah, irreligion is his back. So it's like when we place ourselves, actually even when we turn our backs to Krishna, that's irreligion. We're not seeing him. Real religion means to see Krishna and to understand that he is the supreme person, he is the supreme controller, and I am his servant. Any religion that brings you to that conception, that's bona fide. So we are developing this consciousness of being the servant through the practice of Krishna consciousness. And this is our goal. Our goal is to see Krishna in everything, and what happens is that for the yogi, that when he sees the beauty of Krishna, then it's highly possible that a sense of devotion will grow in his heart. Because, this is so wonderful. And this is what we see in the tribes, in the Amazon. They see the sun and they worship the sun because they're depending on the sun, and worshiping him. So that may be like a little first step in God realization. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions or comments? Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your nice class. Prabhuji, here reference of Mitrā and Varuṇas. What is the reference basically? Who are they? Mitrā and Varuṇas. In the translation.
It says the Mitrā-varuṇas are his testicles.
Who are they basically?
What?
Is the history?
They're demigods, right? Mitrā-varuṇas are demigods. Yeah, I believe so. Prajapatis, yeah. So, you see, this is the imagination, right? Are they the testicles? They are not the testicles. But it's a way to say, is Brahma the genitals? It is, and it is. It's a comparison they made there to bring the impersonalist neophyte to the personal conception of God, who cannot see beyond that matter, material things. Some people are very gross. So they are giving this, and they are giving all these personal aspects. But it's a metaphor.
They are demigods there basically.
I think so. They are demigods.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Just now you told that the yogis should imagine the Virat form of the Lord. Here the text 29 purports La Prabhupada says, the real entity is the Lord Himself.
The real
And
what?
all other, the real entity is the Lord Himself, and all others are imaginary.
Yeah, so I was explaining that in the class, I'll repeat it. The idea is that when we're describing the form, when you're seeing the ocean, when you're seeing the mountains, or you're seeing the ocean as the waves, the yogi has to imagine that that's the Lord. So it is real from the perspective that, like he's saying in that purport, that it is the Lord, because the Lord is non-different from His material creation. So the Lord is inconceivable one and different from His energies. But what we're seeing in the material world is His energies. But the form of the Lord, the original form of the Lord, that's Krishna in Vrindavan, is separate. So we should not also get confused to think that this is the only form of the Lord. No, the actual, authentic, original form of the Lord is Krishna, as I call her boy. Clear? Okay? So it is an imagination from the perspective that we're imposing things, we're seeing that description. But it's not an imagination from the perspective that we are seeing that this is the Lord. So if someone sees that separate from the Lord, then he's not seeing the reality as much as the person who is thinking that, yes, this is the bones of the Lord. I hope I'm not making it confused. Is it clear? Yeah? Yeah.
The real entity is the Lord Himself, and all others are imaginary.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for connecting us with Krishna. And
Thank you.
every object that we depend on Him, every person that we don't exploit, and every situation that we don't get bewildered by. So thank you so much for very nicely explaining. My question is about, you mentioned that we cannot enjoy unless we think ourselves better than others. And
That's the topmost enjoyment, no?
Yeah?
That's like the topmost enjoyment.
Yes.
You can enjoy your senses, but then beyond that is that ego thing. You know, the I am the controller and the enjoyer. It's the enjoyer and the controller, right? Because, yeah.
Yes, and Srila Prabhupada elsewhere mentions that practically every person in this world is envious. You know, so how do we, even after
Chant Hare Krishna. Chant Hare Krishna, read Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, that's the general question. But the thing, you know, how to become free from envy, right? That's the question. But it's many different answers to the question. I'll just give a few hints. But one of them is that to understand, the more that we give up this enjoying spirit, that's the real solution. If you stop trying to enjoy the material world, then you don't covet so much for the things of this world. You are actually aspiring for something much higher, which is Krishna. So you're not so bothered, like, you know, these, you know, Kardashians that are spending like millions of dollars in like 2 weeks, you know, and I haven't spent that in my whole life, you know. And they're like, you're not bothered because you have something higher, you have a higher taste, right? So you are coveting something higher than just sense enjoyment. The more you're trying to enjoy, the envy will be in the heart. It's like this, both things, you know, the more envious you are, the more you want to enjoy as well. It's like, so therefore, that's one thing. And the other thing is to understand as well that everybody is acting under the same rule. You know, we're all working under the same rule. So if someone has got more facility than I have, if someone is being given some favor, or some situation appears to be favorable to that person, he has paid for it. You haven't. You know, everything is happening by the superior arrangement. There is no injustice. You know, when I first came to Krishna consciousness, I was this thing about injustice, unfairness, you know. But really, from the platform of Krishna consciousness, there is no injustice. It may appear to be, but there isn't, because everything is being worked by the laws of nature, like a perfect, you know, Rolex watch. Everything is like, you know, nothing goes out. So therefore, you don't. You understand that, well, you know, he's having that facility now, and then it's okay. And then, of course, is developing a service attitude. That's what you answer the question before you ask the question. That we don't see the world for my enjoyment. I don't try to exploit the world. I see the world as it's not meant. Actually, this basic Krishna consciousness, this world is not meant for my enjoyment. It's meant for service. So immediately, but you know, easier said than done. Are we free from envy? Certainly not. I'm not. Okay, we're struggling with, you know, and Krishna is putting us through all these different situations that we see what is in our hearts, right? And when I see that, then it may become an impetus for me to become more Krishna conscious. I was so foolish. I mean, I don't know if I should say, but when I first came to, before being a devotee, I thought I didn't have a problem with envy. I thought, you know, I'm not that bothered. No, envy is not a big issue. And then I joined the movement. Actually, even in enjoying, I remember I went to Bhaktivedanta Manor one time. I was still like a long hair, you know, not following principles. And George Harrison was there. I was lucky enough that I got to see him. And then the devotees were dancing in kirtan, you know. And I was feeling that, such envy in my heart, you know. I thought, look at these guys, you know. They're so happy. You know, just dancing in front of the Lord. Like, yeah, they look like so naive, and they're just so much happier than I am. And I felt, you know, and I was so stressed, like trying to manipulate and do things. And look at these guys, just dancing in front of the Lord. And it was like, I felt the knot, you know, in front of Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, and Radha Gokulananda. That was such an impetus for me to join the movement, because I thought, these guys have got something way better than anything I have tried before. I want it. I really want it, you know. So it worked well for me. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the class. I have a question about religion. Religion, that was mentioned as a part of Virat Rupa. We told that it is a temporal form of the Lord, right? It is kind of material form. So yeah. What type of religion are we talking about?
What type of what?
Religion, Prabhu.
Religion. I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
Religion, yes? Yeah. Religion is a part of Virat Rupa.
Religion?
Religion, yes. So.
What type of religion? Kaitava dharma?
Yes, this is the question.
Oh, because of the metaphor being mentioned here. Well, there is the eternal religion, Sanatan Dharma. That is timeless. It's always existed. And then you have like religions that have a beginning and have an end. Christianity started so many thousands of years ago. Islam, Buddhism, they are like not eternal. But Sanatan Dharma is the religion of the soul. Has no beginning and no end.
But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, may I just
Saved by the bell. Yeah.
just because Prabhupada told that some people who were already in other religions, they should stay there and follow these ways because they are also righteous ways and they are leading to God. So how can it be if they are temporal?
Yeah, okay. So the point is that these people, those who want to live, they can live now. The point is that, rather than disturb their faith, they can continue on that path. And gradually they will come to the path of Krishna consciousness. So it's different strokes for different folks. Prabhupada, maybe the context of that situation, it's not that that's a universal thing, that everybody should stay in their own religion and not come to ISKCON or to Krishna consciousness. Some people may be advisable to do that. Because it may be, different circumstances. Okay, just stay there. It's like to George Harrison, Prabhupada, he wanted to join and Prabhupada said, no, just stay there, carry on doing your music. Will Prabhupada told you that? Prabhupada will not have told you that, most likely, right? He would have said, join, become a full-time devotee. But you're not like a worldwide, famous musician, So Prabhupada said that as far as the religion is teaching me how to serve God, is bona fide. You can practice that religion and chant the names of God and make progress in spiritual life. So, on the journey of, the journey of the soul back home, back to Godhead, they're still making progress. But the whole Bhagavatam is there to establish the superiority of bhakti. That's the whole, we're hearing all these different processes, and the whole, one of Jiva Goswami in the Sandarbhas, he explains that the purpose of the Bhagavatam, 3 purposes. One of them is to explain or to prove the superiority of bhakti. So we should have no doubts that, yes, practice sadhana bhakti, go back home, back to Godhead in one lifetime. Am I answering the question? Yeah? Okay. Yeah? Oh, okay, the 2. So one is to establish the superiority of bhakti. The other one is to establish who is the topmost expression of divinity. That's expression of divinity, the supreme expression of Godhead. That's Krishna in Vrindavan. And what is the topmost praman? And what is the topmost praman? Srimad Bhagavatam. So these 3 are, we're going to see how this is proven throughout the Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantha Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.